Welcome to AOVO Movie Recaps channel.
Hvor de teater, du rejser rundt med?
As everyone knows, Hannibal Mads Mikkelsen is the only person on this planet who would pour your heart out. Mads' enthusiasm always leaves one wanting more. Recently, the medieval film, The Promised Land, starring Mads, finally got online. This time, there's no pouring anyone's heart out. It's just a hard-working old farmer. The film has charged into the top 15 for this year's Oscars, with over 40 nominations. However, with Leonardo DiCaprio's Killers of the Flower Moon in the running, Mads' chances for Best Actor might be a bit uncertain. Today, let's take a few minutes to delve into what kind of fertilizer Mads is using for farming. The story is set in 18th century Denmark during a dark era of warlords reigning over the European continent. In order to increase tax revenue, the Danish king decides to have people cultivate the barren Jutland wasteland, an uninhabited and desolate area with only a few indigenous tribes living there. Over the past few decades, numerous colonization attempts were made, all ending in failure. Just as officials were ready to abandon the colonization plan, a retired officer named Mads stepped forward. He proposed that he could go and cultivate the plains without needing any funds from the king. The condition was that after successful cultivation, the land would belong to him. Upon hearing this, officials from the royal treasury were overjoyed. They knew the Jutland wasteland was infertile, the soil merely growing stones, incapable of producing crops. This was the very reason why the colonization attempts had failed to succeed. The king also understood the value of that land. He just wanted someone to be stationed there. Without much consideration, the treasury promptly authorized Mads. So, armed with half a lifetime's savings, Mads arrived at the Jutland wasteland. The barrenness exceeded Mads' expectations. The soil was alkaline, and rocks were scattered everywhere. This meant that for farming here, Mads needed to put in considerable effort to clear the land. Despite the grim situation, Mads didn't lose heart. He lay by the fire, envisioning a future life. At that moment, a young girl arrived nearby, hoping to beg Mads for some food. But just as Mads was about to get something, a dark figure suddenly lunged from behind. Fortunately, Mads reacted quickly, reaching for his pistol before being tackled. With a loud bang, the assailant was shot dead on the spot. The little girl, frightened, fled in haste. As it turned out, both were members of a nearby indigenous tribe. These tribes often raided nearby villages or solitary travelers, but they clearly underestimated Mads' combat abilities. The next morning, Mads went to a nearby town early. He intended to hire some workers to tidy up the land, but after looking around, he found no one willing to take the job. It appeared that the indigenous tribe in that wilderness was too brutal, dissuading anyone from going there. With the help of a priest, Mads found a runaway slave couple, the man named John and the woman named Barbara. Unable to endure the brutality of their plantation owner, they had escaped to this place, but due to their status as slaves, they couldn't find work. The kind-hearted priest took them in, and in exchange for shelter and food, Mads offered them an independent room and employment. With the new labor force, Mads' cultivation efforts quickly began to yield results. They set up thatched huts on the barren land, clearing vast stretches of soil. Despite the huts being quite dilapidated, Mads gave his base a bold name, King's House. However, just as Mads was preparing to start sowing, an unexpected visitor arrived on the wasteland. This gentlemanly figure, riding a large horse, was named Sinclair, the owner of the neighboring estate. Known for his brutal and capricious nature, the locals referred to him as the Butcher. Sinclair invited Mads to his estate for dinner, an invitation that Mads, being new to the area, couldn't refuse. Oblivious to the true intentions, Mads gladly accepted the invitation. Little did Mads know, Sinclair's dinner wasn't as appetizing as it seemed. Contrary to what everyone believed, this wasteland wasn't as barren as it appeared. With slight improvements, it could become fertile land. Over the years, Sinclair had been covertly encroaching upon this land, attempting to slyly annex it into his family's estate, hoping to evade significant taxes. However, Mads' arrival disrupted Sinclair's scheme. He asked his steward to bring a contract, intending for Mads to hand over half of the future land income to him in return for allowing Mads to develop the land. Faced with such an unreasonable demand, Mads naturally refused. After speaking, Mads turned to leave. His firm stance impressed Sinclair's cousin, who discreetly stuffed a handkerchief into Mads' saddle. Due to Mads' refusal, Sinclair launched a retaliation. He lured away all the workers by offering double wages, leaving only John and Barbara behind. With Sinclair's meddling, no workers dared to assist on the farm. Faced with such adversity, Mads didn't choose confrontation. He caught the girl who had previously attempted to attack him and often stole food from the farm.
Hvor er de taler, du rejser rundt med?
After a non-compromising yet friendly negotiation, Mads contacted the nearby indigenous tribe, who lived by hunting and had no experience in farming. This led to food shortages in the tribe, causing them to raid frequently. Mads proposed a deal to provide wages and teach them farming. The tribe's leader, not one to miss such an opportunity, accepted the offer, providing Mads with new labor. With the help of the indigenous tribe, the farming on the estate quickly began to progress. To improve the alkaline soil, Mads obtained a large amount of wood ash and sent John to fetch some white clay from the nearby seashore. However, John never returned after his departure. When Mads saw John again, he was badly beaten. The estate's slaves had captured John, throwing him into the dungeon and pouring scalding hot water on him. 18th century methods for punishing runaway slaves. It turned out that both John and Barbara were slaves owned by Sinclair. Mads was deeply troubled and wanted to intervene, but it was prohibited. If he acted recklessly, he would face the same fate. After several cries, John succumbed to his injuries. Without a word, Mads took John's body away. However, Sinclair's retaliation didn't stop. Local laws prohibited the employment of indigenous tribes. Consequently, the workers Mads had so painstakingly recruited were dispersed once again. Seeing the farm empty, Barbara lost the courage to continue staying there. She asked Mads what exactly he intended to plant on this land. Mads remained silent, but opened a bag, revealing several potatoes. It turned out that Mads had planned in advance. Potatoes not only were easy to grow, but also had a high yield, making them suitable for the barren environment. The indigenous people had helped in the cultivation, and now they only needed to wait for spring to sow the seeds. After much consideration, Barbara ultimately decided to stay. At that moment, they heard a noise at the door. When they went to check, they found it was Anna, the girl who had stolen from them before. She had been expelled by her tribe and had nowhere to go. Considering the farm needed extra hands, Mads took her in. The king's house welcomed its third resident. As the icy winds descended and the entire barren land was blanketed in snow, the situation worsened when Anna caught a cold. To provide her with nourishment, Mads made the difficult decision to slaughter the only sheep they had on the farm. Mads's actions deeply moved Barbara. At that moment, she understood completely that this seemingly cold man harbored kindness within. After Anna drank the delicious sheep soup and fell into a deep sleep, Barbara lied, saying she had given Anna the blanket, and then slipped into Mads's bed. The harsh winter soon passed. Mads finally planted the long-awaited potatoes in the soil. Within a few days, a small green sprout emerged, basking in the warm sunlight. For the first time in over 2 years, Mads smiled on this land. Several months later, Mads returned to the capital with the harvested potatoes. Because it was a trial planting, Mads had only reaped 80 bags of potatoes. His purpose in returning was not only to prove to the royal finance officials that cultivation was possible on the barren land, but also to seek additional manpower. Nevertheless, with just some help, he could plant the entire barren land with potatoes by the next spring. The officials were astonished as they looked at the potatoes on the table. Even the king was incredibly excited. Soon, Mads obtained authorization. Not only did he acquire 50 workers, but he was also appointed as a royal surveyor. However, during Mads's impassioned speech, one worker seemed entranced by Anna and recognized her as a member of the indigenous tribe by her skin color. According to local legends, the people of the indigenous tribe brought misfortune. The workers demanded that Mads send Anna away, threatening to leave otherwise. To appease them, Mads had no choice but to send Anna to a convent. With the addition of the workers, progress was made in cultivating the wilderness. News of Mads's appointment quickly reached Sinclair's ears. He angrily summoned servants to vent his frustration. To drive Mads away, Sinclair spent money to hire several convicts, instructing them to cause trouble in the wilderness, even hunting down the settlers with Mads. 2 lone workers were brutally murdered by the convicts. Amid Mads' distress, Sinclair's cousin suddenly paid a visit. She informed Mads about Sinclair's purchase of convicts and their whereabouts. On that late night, Mads, accompanied by his men, surrounded several prisoners. He swiftly took out a dagger and eliminated all the prisoners. Thankfully, Mads was busy tending to his fields. Otherwise, those men might have faced an unsavory fate. However, what Mads didn't know was that among those prisoners was a military officer. This incident became a leverage point for Sinker, who assembled several landowners to collectively report Mads. As a condition, they demanded a share of Mads' land. But Sinka's terms failed to convince everyone. The landowners, with their exaggerated demands, sought almost 90% of the land. Sinka was furious, but had no better way to expel Mads. The joint complaint of the estate owners was quickly sent to the Treasury Department. Discovering Mads' independent thinking, the minister was furious. He stripped Mads of all his titles and sentenced him to death for the murder of the officer. On the day the execution order was received, Sinka arrived at the royal house with his army. All the settlers were expelled, and Mads was arrested. The brave priest attempted to speak up for Mads but was shot on the spot by Sinka. Mads, taken back to prison, faced severe beatings. Sinka, feeling triumphant, hadn't planned on letting Mads off easily, intending to strangle Mads in front of his niece the next day. However, after drinking the wine, Sinka felt excruciating stomach pain. Unbeknownst to him, Barbara, upon learning of Mads' capture, had stealthily returned to the estate and poisoned the wine Sinka favored. After a few screams, Sinka and his balls were left in pieces because Barbara murdered them. Barbara was apprehended by the guards for the murder, while Mads was cleared of all charges. The treasury officials returned the confiscated land to him, but the place was in ruins. Despite having nothing left, Mads didn't give up. He retrieved Anna from the convent. Time flew, and with Mads' efforts the farm began to thrive, and Anna blossomed into a young woman. To reward Mads for his contributions to cultivation, the king sent a certificate, granting him the title of Baron and the ownership of the land. However, Mads couldn't find joy in this. Anna, now grown, found her own prince charming. Despite his reluctance, Mads didn't hold her back. Anna returned to her tribe with her people. Seeing the empty king's house, Mads fell into contemplation. Was all this truly what he wanted? After much thought, Mads made a bold decision. He abandoned everything, rode away from the wilderness on horseback, just as he had arrived, without taking anything. He left behind 10 years of his life here. As the guards were transferring the carriage in which Barbara was, they met a tragic end near the carriage. Barbara appeared on Mads' horse. Together they departed from this land forever, seeking a freer place. That concludes the entire storyline of Mads in the latest 2023 movie, The Promised Land. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the AOVO Movie Recaps channel. Thank you.